To be a 21st century woman is to spend your energy between two gargantuan missions. One, to perform the qualifying tenets of womanhood and femininity to such excellence that you might be rewarded with the cold gruel of society's approval. And two, to make sense of the what, why, and how of the category itself, woman. You alternate between doing as you're told or doing as you must or as you've somehow learned, and then stopping to ask yourself, or anyone who might know, what the fuck exactly am I doing? And why? And whose idea was all of this? Let's talk about it. So, to begin, here is my summary answer to that last question. Womanhood is a tragic and mostly accidental byproduct of the Younger Dryas, that climatic catastrophe that happened about 12,000 years ago or circa 10,000 BCE. The Gulf Stream, or AMOC as Hank Green calls it, which stands for Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, is what allows Northern Europe its temperate, albeit grey and rainy, climate instead of the Siberia-style permafrost it would otherwise have given its latitude. This system depends on cold water plunging into the depths of the North Atlantic, which pulls warm equatorial waters northward. That rush of warmth changes the air and makes Europe habitable, temperate. But this system has collapsed before, around 10,000 BCE. Something did break it. It might have been the melting of Greenland, changing the salinity of the waters and its ability to pull. It might have been something more sudden, like an asteroid impact. We can't know for sure, but we do suspect that the second is actually likely, even though the first is something that's so possible we think it might happen in our lifetimes again. But the second one, the asteroid, very well might be the case because this time period also marks the beginnings of human obsession with stargazing, sky gazing, and with building large megalithic structures centered on tracking astronomical phenomenon. In any case, what we do definitely know is what followed: a little ice age, mass death across the northern hemisphere, megafauna wiped out, most of the normal sized fauna gone too, whole forests gone, rivers gone, ecosystems collapsed, and so, of course, inevitably also humans decimated too. And by humans, we do mean people who at this point were descendants of anatomically modern humans built exactly like us, like 4,000 times over. And that's just doing the rough math of anatomically modern humans being about 200 to 250,000 years old, and an average generation being about 60 years. So thousands of generations in, enough time for cultures and societies of real complexity, recognizable complexity, even if differently ordered to our own. So, real worlds that we would recognize really ending for real. And who tends to survive the endings of worlds? We've seen from the glimpses of various Armageddons in our own times that, generally speaking, it is traumatized, able bodied young men. Those statistically most likely to survive falls and impacts, to outrun floods, to fight animals, to kill for food. When catastrophe strikes, they are the most often the ones left standing, which means that in the wake of avalanches and frostbites and monsoons and floods, the ones left marching south into the warm grasslands of Mesopotamia and India were largely young men, migratory hordes, battered, hungry, trauma hardened hunters. And when they collided with the animist and female deity worshipping peoples of those regions, cultures inclined towards reverence of nature and feminine deities, towards life giving powers, etc., the stage was set for a clash between those who still worshipped what gave life and existed in contexts that made hierarchy irrelevant and strange, and those who had survived only through physical exceptionalism and feats of heroic leadership, and by hunting and killing and consuming what they had once probably also revered. So, from that cesspit, I think, is where we get patriarchy and all its obsessions with conquest and colonization and subjugation, and with its most defining invention, the category of woman. She who would not hunt, she who carried prior knowledge of the context and so should be responsible for teaching, she who could be a salve to every wound suffered, leading you into the blissful oblivion of orgasm, if only she would shut up and take it. She who could literally make more of you until you replaced the ones you had lost. So from then until now, women have been forced to function inside that paradigm of need or else suffer the consequence of failing it. And at every moment in between, women have told each other stories, trying to understand what happened and what to do about it. So, the gift and the curse of being a 21st century woman is that we live at a time when the story has swollen to such unbearable complexity, and at the same time, a time when all the information needed to understand it in full actually lies within reach. So you live in this hazy, persistent certainty hovering over every thought that the answer is right around the corner, that the answer to whatever your life is made of and why it is the way it is just on the tip of your tongue, while at the same time you are subjugated by so many manifestations of patriarchy's rules that logic itself begins to insist that maybe it's all real, begins to insist on treating them as immutable laws of nature. In practice, this means, for instance, knowing that it makes no sense, absolutely no sense, that how fuckable men find you would have any bearing on your worth, the structure of your brain, the capacity of your mind, your right to participate in life, and yet still compulsively optimizing anyway in the pursuit of the most fuckable version of yourself. It means weaponizing the very anxiety and adrenalized fear of this whole absurd situation into the superhuman effort of following the rules. How does she do it all? Anxiety. Anxiety channeled into muscle and nerve, powering the speed and stamina it takes to have it all, to be it all. The particular quirk of the 21st century, like I said, is this: we are in a unique position to figure it all out and to build a new future out of whatever fragments we choose to keep from this accidental 12,000-year detour of horror and ingenious engineering in response to the horror, and whatever we can discover from the time before all of this. And this is all because of the union that has emerged between the patriarch and the daughter, and the consequential seeding of kingdoms from the former to the latter. And this isn't the first time. Indeed, it is an ancient pattern. Again and again through the millennia, patriarchy has so thoroughly destroyed men psychologically through war or capital competition until only desperate daughters can reach them, desperate for attention, desperate to matter, and fleeing mothers who have become too efficient in training daughters to obey the tenets of patriarchy as their own mothers did, so that they too might survive. The motivated girl observes and serves and amuses, entertains, dedicates herself entirely to this until eventually she cracks him open and he loves her enough to upend the rules, whatever they may be. Let her read, send her to school, let her fight, make her your heir. Sometimes, of course, this cracking open happens at the very moment of birth, when a father looks at his daughter and recognizes the one thing, perhaps, in the world that he doesn't hate, the one thing that he's not yet disillusioned from. Yes, there have been other times when the stage was set for women to hold power in vast droves or as the exception to the rule, but the difference between Enheduenna's era and that of Joan of Arc and now is that we haven't had to spend our entire lifetimes fulfilling our father's hollow quests. Without stake burning and other fatal punishments for being too clever a girl, and with all recorded human knowledge at our fingertips, we've been able to finish early or recognize the vain pointlessness of the quest and set it aside, and with lifetime to spare, and thus focus on figuring out and fleshing out the dreck of patriarchy and all the unhealed trauma that birthed it. So, yes, these are strange and shifting times because so many different plot points that all emerge from the same tragedy are converging at once. The complexities of biochemistry have yielded more and more people born with sufficient male indicative sex organs, and accordingly a birthright to the category and rule set of manhood, to find their peace only in the performance of womanhood. And while they fight for the extremely reasonable freedom to do as they wish and to perform whatever category of rules their brain is wired for, so long as the categories persist, there is at the same time an ongoing movement to do away with gender altogether, to flush the categories, to flush patriarchy down along with the codes of behavior that it developed essentially to keep its sex slaves on site and docile, codes which still bear the markings of their origin even after millennia of refinement and improvement, admittedly. And yet, more complicatedly, there are people like me, people who are certainly in the category of woman, and who have had to fall in love with it in order to stay sane, who have had to find and absorb every consolation prize of its existence until we now treasure it so much that the idea of its dissolution is quite harrowing, even if it also makes sense. Because girlhood in particular has been millennia upon millennia of making the most of it, euphoric dancing, sobbing, creating and spicing language, telling stories, becoming united in the trenches of half horrified, half impatient expectation of imminent womanhood. And that's before we even come to the story of the 12,000-year-long ceaseless war against patriarchy. All who fought, all who died, all who spoke, all who wrote, until the invisible chains of patriarchy were finally laid bare and could be scrutinized for weak points and dismantled. So I love womanhood because an obsessive preoccupation with beauty can come to be, in fact, a source of fun and pleasure. Because being desired is a euphoric, if volatile and semi toxic drug, but mainly, I love womanhood because it is a 12,000-year-long chain of women saving each other's lives, explaining, commiserating, teaching tools of escape and resistance, a baton of justice and liberation passed down from hand to hand over and over again until finally I found Simone de Beauvoir's book, age 12, and I could name the rape that had happened to me as such. And I could begin to learn how to make sense of a world where that could happen and how women had survived long enough to tell me so. So there you go. That's 21st century womanhood. Have a nice day.